Hello, and welcome to my podcast where the dark corners are. Hello. I am Vina, and I am your dark travels hostess. Tonight, so when I'm on Facebook, I had joined a bunch of Facebook pages about the different types of paranormal activities, ghosts in Britain, ghosts in Australia, paranormal this, paranormal page that. And as it happens, that a couple weeks ago, I actually got a few back to back posts regarding this amazing situation that is actually happening in Evansville, Indiana at the Willard Library. So these posts were all about paranormal activity so prevalent that the staff has actually launched a camera website for people to check out and actually watch the paranormal activity happen live. And as this is clearly my scope of my jam of a podcast, I reached out to the Willard Library, and today we are graced with Stacie, an employee with the library where this amazing situation is happening. So, welcome, Stacie.
Hi, thanks for having me.
How are you?
Awesome right now.
Okay.
The weather's great.
So let's talk a little bit about the Willard Library. It's
Sure.
so when I saw the pictures on the Facebook, it was an image of like this ghostly apparition entity, but I took the time to look at pictures of the actual library, and this thing is massive. It's like
Yes, it's beautiful.
it's a like a Gothic revival building. It's just astounding.
Yeah, as I would say, as like I think as the term is like Gothic Victorian, maybe even Victorian romance. But yeah, it's got that nice vampire vibe, just if you will.
Right. So give us a little history on this building.
Sure. So Willard Library is located in Evansville, Indiana, which is southern Indiana. So actually the best place to say like where is that? If you look where Kentucky is and then the Ohio River, just go on the other side and it's right there. So we're located in this nice little rural area, I guess. And so the thing about Willard Library is we have thanks to give to Willard Carpenter. And Willard Carpenter actually wanted to build a women's college here in Evansville. And the money just wasn't there for that. So what he decided to do instead was build a library. So we began construction in 1870, and unfortunately it wasn't completed until 1885. It was always a library. It was never a home. I know there's rumors going around that, this used to be a house. Nope. It was a library from get-go. It was named Willard Library because the founder was Willard Carpenter, but also because Willard Carpenter wanted to build a women's college. He was influenced by a women's college in Troy, New York called Willard College. And so he wanted to do the same thing here and have a Willard College here. But like I said, the money wasn't there for that. So he went with Willard Library. So this is, so he was known around town as Old Man Willard. And if he was a poor man, people would think that he was crazy. But he was a very forward-thinking man, very cutthroat. He did odd jobs like dry goods and did some teaching. He did real estate. Sometimes some of that may have been shady. And he was so passionate about this library that he actually came on site every day for construction and was pulling up brick and mortar onto this library up until his death. He died of a stroke, and they believe that was due to, the ongoing stress. And he was about, I think, 70s, 80s when he passed away. And that comes around a little bit to a curve of the Willard family. And Willard Carpenter wasn't known as a Father of the Year, and he had a very strained relationship with his family. And he actually wrote in his will that majority of his money and his wealth would go to the library and very little would go to his actual family.
So, so a clear indication as to where his heart and passion. I mean, the man. It kind of sounds like not only did he leave his money, but he basically gave everything he had, body and soul, to building this beautiful library.
And not only that, the fact that remember that we're in like 1880s or 1880s, and this man was like, I want this library to be free forever for all races, all classes, and all sexes. That's huge. That's in some extreme forward thinking. So yes, his passion was very much here, that to leave a legacy here in Evansville, Indiana.
Absolutely, absolutely. And for context purposes, especially for our foreign listeners, we're talking in a time frame that is about 15-ish, 20-ish years post-American Civil War. And when that war ended, it freed the African Americans from slavery. It gave them United States citizenship. And unfortunately, in retaliation, a lot of the southern states began passing what is essentially pre-Jim Crow laws and promoting segregation between the blacks and the whites. And, these things were literally geared towards African Americans to keep them uneducated, to keep them essentially from, fulfilling what really could have been a great potential in their next chapter in finding freedom. And one of the other things to, again, give context to what you're saying, Mr. Willard Carpenter was from New York, and New York as a state sided with the North in the Union. And so here we have this scenario where this gentleman came from the North, came from New York, and promoted the idea of essentially a fair shake to everybody. I mean, that's obviously a side note. So getting back to the ghosts.
Well, because his heart and soul went into this building and his estranged relationship with his family, that didn't sit well, especially with his youngest daughter, Louise. And she took the library to court to sue, claiming that her father wasn't in the right state of mind, and she lost. So, yeah. So there's speculation to kind of like dip our toes in. There's speculation that Louise Carpenter is the Gray Lady spirit that haunts our library, but we can get into that later. But that's a kind of a crash course history of the library.
Now, you are staff. You work for the library, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Now, how did you come to work here? Was it the ghost? Did they call to you?
No. Well, okay. Yes and no. So what happened is I actually relocated here to Evansville, Indiana from Seattle, Washington about 5 years ago. And my first year here, one of my friends took me out to a Halloween party, and we decided to dip out early. And she said, hey, I want to show you around Evansville. And Evansville has a lot of beautiful old historic buildings. And I'm such a sucker for historic buildings. And she would show me some of her favorites. And she went ahead and was like, have you ever heard of Willard Library? And I said, oh, no. And she's like, oh, you'll have to see it. And we pull into the driveway the driveway of the building. And it's just this beautiful, beautiful building. It's breathtaking. And I'm already a sucker for old buildings as it is, or historical buildings. And all of a sudden she goes, oh yeah, it's also notoriously haunted. I said, what? Shut the front door. Are you serious? She goes, yeah. And she went ahead and showed me the website, and I looked at the webcams and stuff. And I love it was closed because it was nighttime because Halloween party. Right. And I went home, and the next morning I thought, I wonder if they're hiring. And here I am. So I've been with Willard this will be my 4th year.
Okay. So, did the paranormal activity begin when Willard died or afterwards? When would you say
So
it started?
afterwards.
Okay.
So the first gray lady sighting was in 1937. And the story behind that is that our maintenance man at the time would go down because it was a winter morning. He would come in early and stoke the furnace full of coal to help get the library warm. And he was doing that one night and he heard somebody down in the basement with him. And he went ahead and called out and, was looking around, and all of a sudden a figure of a woman in gray. I don't know if he said if she was transparent or not, but she was gray in a Victorian garb, boots, high neck collar, her hair was up, and she had a veil over top of her face, and then she vanished.
So this is the 1930s when this happened. So we're in the Great
Correct.
Depression at this time.
Correct.
Was there an event outside the hospital? Hospital? I'm sorry. Was there an event outside the library or the town or? I mean,
not that I know of. There hasn't been any reported deaths in the library or around the property.
Okay. So her arrival doesn't coincide with any.
I mean, there are theories. I have a theory. I have zero proof to prove this theory, but in 1937, we had a huge flood and the Ohio flooded. And I mean, like, it's flooding that people were on rooftops type of flooding. And my theory is that, especially with the paranormal, that water is a conduit. And I figured that the water probably reached the land. And I figured that's how she came to be. So she traveled more or less. But that's a theory. I have zero proof on that. I'm still looking for photos to see if I can find of the library with some water, how far the water's come. I don't have a lot of downtime, so it isn't at the top of my priority list. But it is a theory that I have.
Okay. So besides the gray lady, because my assumption, and it is assumption at this point, if you guys have so much activity going on, you have more than just one ghost. So
Correct.
so there are others. So let's talk about the others. Who else is haunting this beautiful library?
So we have a couple. We have two other spirits besides our gray lady spirit. We have a little boy named Billy and an older gentleman named Frank. I do not know how their names came to be. I think from previous paranormal investigations or other mediums that have come through, and it just kind of stuck. Billy likes to play on the stairs, supposedly, on our stairway cameras. Also likes to hang out in the children's department. A former director told me that there was a paranormal investigator who came through, and he had one of those Connect cameras, and you could see the stick figure of like a childlike figure laying on their stomach, kicking their legs back and forth, playing with some of the toys. And then Frank, that one, my memory's a little bit muddy, but he seems to make an appearance in a shadow form. People have seen like a silhouette. I shouldn't say shadow because that sounds menacing. A silhouette. I think we actually have a capture of a man in a bowler cap on the stairs. So I actually have that picture, which I'm more than happy to send you if you'd like to see it. And there have been other spirits that have come through. Supposedly, we do have mediums come through that say, there's portals that open up, and portals are unpredictable. They open and close randomly. And it wouldn't surprise me because we do have things that we call like weird energy days. And just, it's hard to explain. I guess the best way to put it is like, when the full moon comes out, everything's just weird. It's like that. And something's going to happen. And it could be something small, like the electricity will flicker out and come back on. Most recently, we had a situation where it sounded like someone was in the back stacks where our normal books were, and it sounded like someone was moving books, like lighting books across. And we thought we had patrons on our floor. And it happened a couple of times. We went through and the books weren't moved. So kind of get to know the ghost a little bit in a positive aspect of she's just one of our work people, and it may not be her. It could be Billy or Frank, or one of the many other spirits that come through from the random portals that supposedly open up.
So they're friendly. We're saying they're nothing to be afraid of.
No, we've never had anything menacing, and I have been theory and no proof. I feel that our three residential spirits the Gray Lady, Frank and Billy, I feel like they keep the riffraff out. How about that?
Okay.
But I think it's a theory just because nothing has ever been menacing. Nobody fears for their life. It doesn't feel like extreme evil. It's just kind of, we're just, I guess, used to it. I mean, and don't get me wrong, sometimes we're like, oh, is that paranormal activity? And it's like, no, it's humid outside, and this is an old building, and the floorboards creak, so there's that. It's easily debunked.
Now, you mentioned that you guys have the tendency to have like weird vibe days. Is there a certain time of year that's a little bit more prevalent with these weird vibes?
Yeah, actually, surprising or not shocking, I guess. October seems to be when we get more activity. And I don't know if that's just because we get more foot traffic of people trying to come see our spirits, or if the veil is thinner, or I don't know. But yeah, usually October is, the energy is different and that we see a spike and stuff. And again, like and prior outside to October, it's like peaks and valleys. There's times where we'll have like, a week of like solid weird things, and then we won't see anything again or notice anything again for at least another 6 months. It's so random, but it is consistent that October seems to be a little weird.
Now, you mentioned that mediums have come through, and it is my understanding that you guys don't offer like a nighttime ghost hunt for the general public. Is that correct?
No, we do not. But I will tell you that Mondays and Tuesdays we're open until 8 p.m. So you are more welcome to bring your ghost hunting equipment, as long as you don't disrupt our patrons or our staff or record them without, previous knowledge or consent. And then we also request that you do not provoke or be disrespectful to our spirit. Especially if I get wind of it, I will personally kick you out. This is their home, and you don't need to be coming in to disrespect them like this. But if you want to come in, we're open until 8, and I'd say from like 6 to 8 p.m., it's fairly quiet, knock on wood. It's fairly quiet, so you could probably get some good stuff if you wanted to.
Now, have you had any famous mediums or famous ghost hunters come through?
Yes. So we had, in the 70s, we had Ed and Lorraine Warren come through. They were doing a seminar at one of the local colleges here, and they wanted to check out a haunted location. And you know who Ed and Lorraine Warren are?
Absolutely.
Okay. Some people are like, I don't know. Because when I found out, I was super stoked. And everyone's like, who is that? I'm like, oh my God.
Annabelle, everybody. Annabelle?
Right. I'm like, Anyways, so they came through, and Lorraine actually went into a trance, and she saw a woman looking into a pool of water, I believe. And she tried to talk to this lady, and we believe that it was the lady in gray, and she wouldn't speak to Lorraine. But the one thing that Lorraine Warren did say is that the building isn't haunted, the land is haunted.
Okay.
Which ties into my theory with the whole water thing.
Right. I mean, that is something that is common, actually. And I think that sometimes, I mean, it may not necessarily be something that you guys see, but sometimes when buildings get constructed or reconstructed and you're disrupting the flow and the energy and the land itself, it creates extra paranormal activity. And I believe you guys had some extensions or some work done. Did you guys see an increase?
So I wasn't here, sadly. But yes, actually, when we put up our new addition, the toilets, our automatic toilets, continually flushed, like constantly. We had plumbers and the electrician plumbers and whoever else comes out to make sure the sensors weren't off, or what, was it a shadow? And I mean, they would constantly flush. And I think it was for a couple of weeks. I mean, the toilets just constantly flushed. I mean, randomly they flush now, but I chalk that up to shadows, like, because there's trees outside the windows and stuff. So, but the constant flushing doesn't make sense. We've also had actually flash to recently, I think, was it last October? I went in to use the restroom and I washed my hands, and the sinks are also automatic. And I was washing my hands and I dried them, and I'm getting ready to walk out of the bathroom, and the sink's still on. I was like, that's weird. So I go back over, wave my hand in front of it and try to, get it to turn off, and it's just running full blast. And I was like, It's probably just a glitch. I'm going to go and finish my closing duties. So I close everything down and I text my boss saying, hey, I might take me a little bit longer. This thing's acting weird. And she said, okay. And I ended up calling her and she said, what's up? I go, this thing's still running. And she said, really? And I said, yeah. She goes, are you looking at it? And I'm like, yes. I go, can you hear it? And I'm standing there looking at this sink and it's just running. And I'm trying to do all this odds and ends, try to get it to turn off, and it wouldn't do it. And so she's like, oh, let me take a look at it. So I leave the bathroom, go grab my stuff because we're getting ready to leave. And she took 2 steps into the bathroom and the sink turned off.
So it wasn't wanting her attention, apparently.
I guess not. So the ongoing joke is that apparently I didn't wash my hands long enough. I don't know.
To the great lady's satisfaction, it sounds like.
Yeah, right. So the flashback into history, when we were putting up the new edition, we have a Browning gallery, and there's a projector and a projector screen that comes down. And the projector just kept going up and down and up and down and up and down and up and down. And the construction workers were just getting super annoyed. Like, this is ridiculous. And the electrician showed up and they're like, it's about time you got here because the projector keeps going up and down, up and down. You need to look at the electrical equipment because this is not normal. And the electrician goes, oh, well, that is the problem because we haven't hooked up power to that yet.
Oh, so there was no electricity to the projector. Wow. Yeah. Okay. Now, with all these activities and the idea of putting the library after hours on camera, am I misspeaking? Is the cameras running 24 hours a day or just after hours? Okay. 24
hours a day. So if you want to spy on me on the adult services floor, you can.
And this is how many buildings again? This library?
So this is so it's just the one building, but we have 3 floors.
Okay.
So we have a camera on the top floor, which is our research room, which is where I'm talking to you at right now. And then our next camera is the stairwell. And then our third camera is the adult services floor. And then we have 2 cameras in the children's department, one in the story pit and one in the main children's area, because that is notoriously the most haunted spot. I don't believe that. I think the research room is, but that's just my opinion. And then we have a basement hallway camera. And the reason why the basement hallway camera is there is because that's where the Gray Lady was first sighted in 1937.
Have people repeatedly seen her there?
We get people will screenshot and send it to us and be like, oh, hey, in fact, I had a lovely patron send me an email and said, hey, she said that she kept seeing someone walking across by the windows in the children's department, and is that normal? And I said, I pointed out, unfortunately, I don't believe it's paranormal activity. The children's department is located in the basement. It's eye level with the parking lot, and we are next to Berry Plastics, and they have workers who work 24 hours. So on their break, they like to walk around our park. So you're in perfect eye shot of seeing someone's feet walk back and forth across the windows. So, but anyways, I'd rather you ask me and say, is this paranormal, as opposed to oh, it was the Gray Lady. And I was like, well, what was it though? But anyways, people will take pictures and send it to us and be like, oh, look what I caught. And sometimes there's things that we get that you can't explain. And you're like, yeah, that is odd. And other times it's like I said, it's no, it's probably not because, parking lot, or that's not an orb, that's a sunspot. So I mean, it's just little things like that.
So you're almost like a little ghost hunter yourself. You're trying to decipher, could this be legit versus debunking?
Well, so a little fun fact about me: my family income growing up was based off death. My dad was a headstone maker. Both my parents dug graves, and my mom took care of a cemetery. So paranormal activity is not something that's new to me, but I'm very big on trying to debunk it because I don't want to jump on everything's paranormal activity, because I feel like there's more validity if I'm looking at it as, well, it can be explained. And if it can be explained, then that's fine. But there's things that have happened that we can't explain. And the cameras have caught things that we can't explain. And it's just fascinating.
So when did the idea of putting the cameras up come about?
Okay, so the cameras came up, I'm dating myself right now, 20 years ago, and they came up on a whim. And the idea was that they were going to go up Halloween night and then be turned off on November 1st. That was the plan. And so again, word of mouth, everyone knew that, hey, we have the place is haunted. So the idea of like webcams being able to see what's going on in the library after dark, people were really excited about that. In fact, they were so excited that when it went live, we had 2 million hits happen all at once, and it broke the internet in Evansville for a few hours.
I mean, that's a claim to fame. It really is.
Right. So yeah, our director at the time, he was like, we're onto something here. And so he decided to have the cameras up full time, and our cameras are sponsored. So our sponsor takes care of our cameras, and if they go down, they're the ones who take care of it. I mean, we report like, hey, it's down, but yeah, we have sponsors who will go ahead and sponsor the webcams to be up and running 24 hours.
Okay. So what are some of the things that people are actually catching on these cameras?
Oh, goodness. Let's see. Oh, there are a couple. I guess I'll do the most famous one. So real quick, just to throw it out there are photos floating around the interwebs, and a lot of these are Photoshopped. Especially, I would like to point out the demonic dark entity in the children's department. It's creepy, it's scary, and it's completely Photoshopped. It is not real. So,
and that's probably the one that I saw around the different paranormal groups. Because that sounds about right. That it's like this creature with his arm in the back. Yes. It's all twisted. Yes.
Yeah, and it's like it's crawling on the ground. Yeah, yes. Totally not real. It's not real. But have you seen on the interwebs like a gray figure walking down the stairs, like holding his dress and walking down the stairs?
No, but that's been caught. That was been caught.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and I'll tell you the story about that if you'd like to hear it.
Sure.
So how we work at the end of the day is when we shut the library down, we all meet on our main floor and we all leave and exit the building together. And the last person out sets the alarm, and when you set the alarm, a notification is sent to the director, hey, Stacie set the alarm with the timestamp. Cool. So we did that and walked out to the parking lot, and all of a sudden people are getting to their cars, and they notice that all the lights are on the top floor. That's odd, So 2 of my employees were brave enough to come back in, disarmed the alarm, and the librarian who closes the top floor went back upstairs, and he's a seasoned librarian. I mean, he doesn't, is it possible that he forgot to turn off the lights? Absolutely. But he's been doing this for so long that he probably do it in his sleep. So he turns it off again, goes downstairs, and they set the alarm and they leave. And this photo that got submitted was submitted like 5 minutes after the alarm was sent. So we have a timestamp.
So you have a definite, everyone was out of the building when this
Correct.
Image of a gray lady holding her dress, you said?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
So people are not only legitimately watching, but they're recording to see if they catch something.
Correct. Now, so these are back when the cams, and I feel like it did a better job capturing paranormal activity because it was one of those, like, it took like 3 seconds for it to refresh the image. So it was like a still image and then it refreshed. So it wasn't a fluid motion that we're used to now, which is what we have now. And I don't know if we've caught anything with the newer cameras as of yet. I will tell you that the research room constantly goes down. Constantly. That camera, for whatever reason, we've even switched cameras and it constantly goes down. I've actually talked to one of my coworkers, and I didn't know this. We were doing ghost tours last October and we were talking about it, and she would tell me that she'd close at night, push all the chairs in, and then she'd have to open the next day, and she was the last one off of her floor. She'd come in the next day and there's chairs pulled out.
So almost like that scene from Poltergeist where the mom's in the kitchen wiping down the counter, then all of a sudden the chairs are all pulled out.
Speaking of, so you remember the original Ghostbusters?
Yes.
Where it has the library ghost?
Where she hushes them, yes.
Yes. So that scene was based off of us.
Okay.
Not that she shushed us, but we were the influence for that scene of a gray lady woman ghost haunting a library.
Okay. Okay. So, what activity would you say, or incident that has occurred, would you say kind of really surprised you or kind of really like jarred you the most?
Jarred me the most. Oh, like scared or as in like sanity check?
Combo.
Okay, so I would say it was, gosh, it had to be my second year here, and I was working in the archives reading room, and I was sitting there, and the room echoes, and I will usually have like soft music that will play, and it's like spa feeling, and because it is so quiet down there, and I don't know if this happens to you, it definitely happens to me where like I almost need a break from sound, like almost like when we talk on the phone too long, you're just like, ugh, just need a break. So I turned off all the music and I'm sitting there, and I heard a woman crying, and I mean like crocodile tears, sobbing, and not sniffle, like I mean just sobbing. And it wasn't super loud. It was barely audible, just barely. And I was like, okay, but it was audible enough that it made me get up to go check. And I was like, oh, well, someone upset? Like I should go check on them. So I ended up walking down the hallway to our new bathrooms because I thought that's where it was coming from, and the sound stopped. And I went to the bathrooms and checked anyways. I'm like, okay, that's weird. And then I ended up calling my boss, and I said, hey, I go, are you busy? And she goes, oh no. She goes, what's going on? I said, I heard a woman crying, and there's nobody there. And she goes, oh, oh, do you need to come up here and hang out with me for a little bit? And I said, oh no, I'm fine. Just letting you know. And so she was the only person I told. Well, flash forward a couple months later, I came into work and my boss said, oh, hey, did you talk to our archivist? And I said, no, why? She goes, she heard crying as well. I said, oh, are you serious? She goes, yeah. So I run downstairs and I bust into her office and I'm like, you heard the crying. And you see the wheels turning and it clicks. She goes, you heard the crying? I'm like, yes. And so that sanity check of we both heard it, and her story was very similar to mine, except exclude the music. She heard crying from her office, and the same thing. She walked down the hallway, and right when she got to the bathroom, it stopped.
So, have you noticed an increase in people coming in, kind of trying their best to kind of be like coy or, you know, trying to do a little ghost hunting and checking out books at the same time?
I mean, yes and no. Like you get the people who come in and they are like you said, they try to be like, coy about it. And then you get some who just really don't care and they're like, I'm here hunting ghosts. It's like, sweet, just don't disrupt me or my patrons. Have a nice time. Actually, we have this little boy and his grandma who come in once a week, and they have dowsing rods or EMF detector, and they walk around after checking out books from the children's department. It's really cute.
That has to be kind of a little bit of a blessing because now you have two different generations having a common bond and
Yeah.
having these memories of ghost
Yeah.
hunting in a haunted location.
Mhm. Oh yeah. I mean, and sometimes you get stuff like, I mean, he's just the cutest little boy, and he goes, yeah, he goes, my meter went off here, and I was like, really? He goes, yeah, and it didn't go off last week right there in that spot. And I was like, okay. And then and unfortunately, you get a lot of kids who do come in who are terrified. And, I don't want to see the ghost. I'm terrified. I'm scared. And usually that's when I'll step in and, because mom and dad think it's cool and want to look around this old building, supposedly haunted, and the gray lady's here. And that's usually when I step in and say, I'm like, she's very, very respectful. And I would just simply say, hi, my name is blah. I do not want to be scared. I do not want to see you. Could you please respect my wishes? And I go, and she'll respect that because she's nice like that. And they usually chill out. So we get to see all different kinds of spectrum. I mean, and we also have people on staff too who have worked here for like 20 something odd years and have never had a paranormal experience ever.
Really? I'm
Yeah.
kind of maybe the opinion that ghosts are like cats. People who are like, I don't like cats, I don't like cats, don't come near me. That cat targets that person to be the little, maybe an agitator, but also be like, I'm all
Maybe.
right. Whereas
Yeah,
ghosts may
I
be
get it.
kind of the same thing. Now, you mentioned Ed and Lorraine Warren. Now, was that the only thing she said or the only entity that she picked up on while she was there?
Correct. There could have been more, but this is like the telephone game. So I I probably just have the bare bones. Supposedly she's written us a letter, all of this detailed. And again, this was in the 70s, and I wasn't even a twinkle in my daddy's eye at that point in time. So,
Okay.
uh, so supposedly she has a letter somewhere, and I mean, we're in the process of trying, if we come across it, awesome. But this is what was handed down to me from one of our former directors, and that was handed down from him from a former director. So again, we have the telephone game. So, and I guess Ed and Lorraine Warren known being here isn't a very known fact. That's something that I brought up, and people are like, "Wow, really?" And I'm like, "Yeah, did you not know that?" Because I thought that was a factual thing. I mean, it is a factual thing, but I thought it was common knowledge. But no. Speaking other than mediums, we also had ghost hunters or taps. They
Okay.
came out as well, and I think that was in the early 2000s.
So Jason and Grant were in.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, yes.
And did they find anything? Did they catch
No.
anything? Oh.
So here's I like the show. Okay, let's put that disclaimer. I like the show. I think it's great. I think it's like season 2, episode 17, second half. I think, and there was some internal problems that they were having between like some of their staff. Someone was leaving and someone got their feelings hurt because they didn't know, something like that, and it kind of focused on the conflict between these two people and less so on our spirit, because they were in the children's department talking and trying to get some EVPs or whatnot, and they're talking about hurt feelings, and I'm like, okay. However, they did get something, but they didn't get it on camera. So they didn't have their cameras turned that way. I think they were getting ready to pack up to leave, and they saw a white mist go up the wall,
That wasn't
and they were very
previously
upset.
there. Okay.
Nope, nope. Yeah. So that's fun. Also, if you watch Dead Files, are you familiar with Dead Files?
Oh yes, Amy. Oh yes.
Uh-huh. So Steve actually came to our library to do some of his research, but it wasn't with one of our librarians. I think they just used the facility, and that was funny because I mean I love all these shows, right? So I'm also the queen of naps, and I fell asleep and I woke up and Steve was sitting there talking, and I'm like, I know that room. Oh my God, I know that room. So I had to back it up. They were doing a case in Kentucky, and yeah, and they end up using our room for the aesthetics and some of the research, but they used a different genealogy to look up stuff. So I don't know, but it was really cool because our library is featured on that too, and I didn't know that. I actually found that out a few weeks ago, so I was pretty excited.
So again, the website is available for everybody and it's on 24
Correct.
hours. And what is the website address?
So it is willardghost.com, WILLARD ghost.com.
Okay. And you had previously mentioned Halloween time is where they tend to have a
Mhm.
more of a paranormal activity going on.
Yeah, yeah. We also have, I know unfortunately, because we do ghost tours during October, and unfortunately during the pandemic, we weren't able to do that. But what we did do is we had a little bit of a paranormal investigation, and that is on our YouTube channel, which is Willard Public Library, and you can find all the ghosty stuff on there. We're also on TikTok, so if you want more current ghosty events, that's also on there too. The sync being on, that's on there. So if you want to check out that story, you can follow up with that.
Now, are you anticipating doing some more ghost tours come this October 2023?
I don't know. We'll kind of see. We are kind of seeing how it goes. But I mean, you're always more than welcome to come in. We have Ghost Packet, kind of gives you a quick little history and a walkabout. But I don't know as of yet. If we do, we will post it on our website or on Facebook. and that's usually how we get the word out. When it gets a little bit closer, I would have a more definite answer for you, but right now I say tentative yes, but I'm not 100% on that one.
Okay, so if people were curious or interested, they would definitely be wise to check out either your webpage or your Facebook page. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, Stacie, you have just given us so much crazy and fun and just amazing information regarding this amazing building. I mean, okay,
Oh, sure.
so the demonic entity isn't real, but
No.
the
No,
activity
it's not.
definitely is.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, I want to thank you again for joining us tonight. Final thoughts to our listeners.
You know what? Support your local library. Go get the library card, free materials, ebooks. Do it.
All right. Thank you, Stacie, for joining us tonight.
Thank you. Not at all. Thanks for having me.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So on to business. Facebook. We have a Facebook page. If you're curious or interested and would like to join, send me a request at wherethedarkcornersare@gmail.com. But in the meantime, if you have a serial killer or another library or UFO story you'd like for us to share, send us a request at wherethedarkcornersare@gmail.com. But in the meantime, please remember, only the few can find the beauty in the darkness, which is why we hope to meet you where the dark corners are.